Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I think we have people here to get started. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, our first meeting of the 2025 calendar year. Happy New Year's, everyone. Hope your holiday season was relaxing and all that. So we'll just jump right into our agenda and start with these information only items. Are there any comments or questions related to any of the information only items? Hearing none, we'll jump into the abstracts. There is one, Title 4A Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant. Ms. Haxey?
Hi, yes, good evening. Happy New Year. So this is the Title 4A grant. This is a title grant. It's a little bit interesting because they let us use the funds over a 2-year period, but we write it every year. And basically, it is meant to scoop up all of the things that are sort of outside the normal range of what the other grants pay for. So there's 3 buckets that we look at. One is well-rounded educational opportunities. The next one is safe and healthy schools. And the third bucket is effective use of technology. And the grant application requires us to have a certain percentage in each of these buckets. So I'll just briefly give you some examples. In the well-rounded educational opportunities, we do a lot of funding of things related to the transition from high school to college. So we have our college and career advisors funded through there. We fund all of the college before college textbooks for students. We pay for seal of biliteracy testing and awarding, and we pay for all of AP training, AP coordination, and AP tests for students there. And we also pay for a lot of programming and enhancing access to STEM, world languages, art, science, music, and social studies. So we have some curriculum writing money in there for those subjects. I have a little part-time world language coach on there. We're buying new maps and globes for social studies. We do some field trips on there. Oh, we pay for college trips as well. And that's where you saw we have that one little Chinese program with Clinton Avenue and Fairhaven on there. We pay for social studies resources and science resources through Gale Cengage. And we pay for instruments and maintenance and things like that for the music department. And then in safe and healthy schools, we focused on bullying prevention, social emotional learning, student civic involvement, and increased parent involvement. So you'll see a lot of Title IX things on there with bullying prevention, safe schools training. Actually, we're going to pay for a conference for Dr. Baker to get more training. The climate surveys there, student council meetings are on there. And then parent involvement, we pay for the phone-in translation service. And we also, in the safe and healthy schools, have a focus on at-risk middle school students and high school students. So you'll see there's a at-risk middle school program run by Mr. Carolina, and now he's starting an at-risk high school program for boys identified, and he's going to focus on 20 particular boys in that program for this coming year, and actually this year as well. And then we also have we focus on the health curriculum and funding the health curriculum there. And one other thing that we were able to include this year, we had a little bit extra money compared to other years, is we're going to try to pay for some of the sanitary products for girls in the lavatories. That was part of that legislation that went through. And finally, effective use of technology. So this is where we pay for a lot of those computer apps and things like that, like Screencastify, Padlet, Quizlet, Gimkit, Kami. And we're also paying for a district-wide credit recovery that we do is a hybrid model. So that's how it's under this bucket, is it's using technology in a unique way in order to deliver that credit recovery instruction. So that's the overview.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes. So thank you for kind of applying for this, and thank you very much for the walkthrough and the write-up of all the different ways that the resources can be invested. You named a number of things that have been expressed as very important to members of the district. And yeah, I look forward to hearing about some of the outcomes. Yeah, it just seems like it's spread over
It
and
sure
will give
is.
impact in a variety of areas. If somebody asks me to name all the particular areas that we could add resources, I will come back to this list and be able to reference it. So thank you for your work and your team's work.
Thank you. And we did do a needs assessment this year. So we sat down and looked at some outcomes from all the different programs. And I sat with each of the sort of managers of these areas. I don't really manage all this. I just sort of disperse the funds and help people with the funds, spending the funds. But yeah, and there's a lot of great things going on in many different, it covers, as you said, many different areas.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing else, we'll move on to the MOUs. First one is with New Haven Counts. Mr. Nguyen?
Yes, so New Haven Counts is a tutoring program to boost literacy and numeracy among students. And basically what they wanted to do is draw a correlation between the amount of tutoring that they provide the district and with the SBA and the iReady outcomes, which is why they want to be able to have a data sharing agreement in regards to the SBA levels of 2022, 23, 24, and 25, as well as iReady level scores of 22 through 24 as well, to determine the effectiveness of their program.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, thank you. And this may be in the paperwork that you provided, so thank you. My question is, so two questions. One, are the data anonymous, or what student identifying information is there? And will be shared rather. And my second question is, what do we know about rental permission? Like, who else needs to sign off on our district sharing data?
So, can I address the second question? So I don't understand
Yes.
the rental part of it.
The rental? I said, who else needs parental? I'm sorry, parents.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about
sorry.
that.
That's why I was really confused. Parental.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you for asking for clarification.
Yeah, so that would be up to the program of getting the information from the parents itself. I think what the program wanted to do was get a more of a generic information of getting the scores and then trying to see if there was an increase overall. But I can get more information for the ways that they get their student data to you.
Yeah, I mean, I see the value in groups having the data and seeing where the increases happen positively and being able to tell that story. So maybe just if our in-house counsel can review what the agreement is and make sure everyone who has signed off on it needs to sign off on it, and that the appropriate kind of data sharing pieces are in place. And I do think it's a good thing for us to be able to tell the story of how our students continue to grow and achieve through staff and family efforts and efforts of their own.
Okay, I'll follow up with legal.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and sorry, and just the other question is, do you know whether it's the data is anonymous or the students' names are being shared. You don't have to answer that, but that's just another question for us to make sure we have that um, identified for exactly what we want to share and how we want to share it.
Okay. I'll follow up with both legal and the program about that.
Yeah, my reading of the documentation is that it would be identifiable data because it's going to have specific test scores, and it's citing a school official exception to FERPA. So, and it has our student data privacy agreement also attached that they're agreeing to, which covers things like what to do with the data when they're done with the using it, et cetera. Attorney Alexiadis?
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to let you know I've been lurking in the background, and so I heard you said about legal review, and I will address that with John offline.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Okay. Thank you for that, sir. And just timelines on this, because is that conversation going to be able to happen this week so that we can address this on Monday's board meeting?
We can have that conversation tomorrow with John's schedule permitting.
All right, thank you. If somebody could just circle back to the committee sometime this week, that'd be great. Hearing nothing else on this, let's move on to the second one, an MOU with MobileServe LLC. Mr. Nguyen?
Yeah, so MobileServe is a program for Sound School in order for their students to track their community service hours. And basically, the school was asking to have more of a user-friendly program in order for them to track their community service hours. So the fields that MobileServe is interested in having is the first and last name, the school email, and the cohort year. And those are the four fields that they wanted in order for them to provide the community service hours and track it for them.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? The one question I had is what's being used now or used in other schools to track these things? And would this be kind of like a pilot for trying a different system, or is?
So the district used Serve Our City, and I think with this, what Sound wanted to do is have it more interactive for them and the students to better track how well the students are doing with community service. And this is a separate program on their end.
Okay. I was just curious. It's a little bit outside the purview of our committee, I guess, for some of this, but in terms of specific software use I just was curious as to what was being used and if this was going to inform future decisions on renewing contracts with other things as well. So, but I'm assuming you all will be looking at that. If MobileServe does a better job of it, maybe it'll work well for the other schools. So, hearing nothing else on this, we'll jump into agreements. And the first one is with Custom Insight for climate surveys. Dr. Baker?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so that's with Custom Insights, and that's for the annual student, staff, and central office climate surveys.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to these?
Yes, just a question. Is this the same company we've used in previous years?
No, actually, this is the new company that Dr. Yarber we use. This is our first year. Last year was our first year. This is our second year, so we'll actually be able to compare the data.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And just as a reminder for everybody, and that we have to do climate surveys, and this is a chance to do climate surveys against all the schools, and keep track of all the different responses from students, I think parents, staff, teachers, etc., and be able to look at the data school by school and district wide on a variety of topics. Am I correct in that? That's kind of the
Correct.
overview of this. So a criticism in the past is, why do you need to spend money on a survey? We could put together a survey, but it's a bit of a complicated survey that has to meet a lot of required needs and reporting. And as we just heard from Ms. Haxey, it's covered in our Title 4A grant. So, all right, just wanted to point that out. So we'll move on to the next one, which is an agreement with Lifeline Cares. I will just note that the attached documentation is the Mobile Serve MOU again, and not specific to Lifeline Cares.
Yeah, Mr. Wilcox, I think Ms. DeMeo is working on that piece on the back end. So I think it was
Wanted
just.
to point that out, but
Yeah, nope, she's working. Thank you. Yep, they're working on the back end. So what this is, we may not actually get to the $55,000. What this is for us to provide nursing care specifically for some of our students who, for the most part, are type 1 diabetic and require some additional nursing support on field trips. This is not some of the special education related. This is a district agreement for students who require that on field trips, require the additional nursing support.
all right, so it's kind of on-call nursing support
It
as
is.
needed for complex medical needs.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Any comments or questions? My one question, and I'm sure it's covered in the documentation, is just how was this vendor selected?
This vendor was selected, quite honestly, we utilize multiple independent contractors. As you know, we present here this one in the past as we've been able to gather information or gather folks to be able to be available for us for field trips. They have been the most responsive, Mr. Wilcox, in being able to manage.
All right, thank you. And I know you all are working on having the documentation posted, so we'll circle back and take a look at it this week well, it needs just to be ready to go for the full board meeting, but it would also, if someone could let me know when it's posted, I'd like to review it. But it is kind of something standard that we've approved many times before. So I just would like to take a look at it though.
Mr. Wilcox will send that out to you, to the committee tomorrow morning.
All right,
And
and it'll be posted
yes,
here as well on the
yes.
board docs. Thank you. All right. Hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to 5.3, an agreement with United Illuminating for some more retrofitting for lights. Mr. Carter or Mr. Aline?
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. This is for LED retrofit at 3 schools, Davis Street School, Beecher School, and Conte West Hills. This is a reimbursement agreement. We were real successful with an agreement with UI last year at 4 schools. 2 of those schools are, to mention, a Troop and Metro. And UI has agreed to continue this relationship, and we look forward to having this agreement approved so we can retrofit these 3 schools.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, thank you for bringing the agreement forward. You clarified one of my questions, which was that this was a reimbursement, so UI pays upfront, and my understanding is that we pay about $5,000 a month over 3 years to reimburse them for the 100 and something thousand. Is that 195,000?
From my understanding, yes, that's what the agreement is, yes.
Okay. My second question is, are we already, or can we track our energy usage, and such as when we will break even from this investment? And I think it would be useful as it relates to our climate priorities, to be able to know where we stand now, what are the changes we're making in various schools, and the overall impact on energy and the smaller footprint that we're taking up as it relates to energy. Does UI provide that tracking? Are we able to ask them about it, or do we have the
Well, we
capabilities to
also
monitor
have
it?
a contract where we are tracking energy uses at the schools.
Okay.
Secondly, we also ask UI, but I think we need
Okay.
to fit those together and come with a report to say, this is where we were 2 years ago, this is where we were last year, and this is where we're going in future years.
Okay. That would be great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I had no questions on this one. So we'll move on to amendments. And the first one, or the only one, is an amendment number 2 to the agreement with Shipman and Goodwin. Mr. Carter?
Yes, I brought an amendment earlier. This legal services for Shipman has been driven primarily by one case, and there are one or two others that are driving up the contract price. And so to be on the safe side, we want to add an extra $150,000 so we can finish up the other cases that Shipman is handling for us. But we need to add this money so that we can cover our legal expenses in a timely manner and get these cases resolved.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, I know at some point we do provide kind of analysis of our legal spends between years and this current year. Um, I think you answered my question in terms of the justification for these costs. Do we know whether they are below so far the costs from last year?
From my examination, they're above the costs from last year because of these one or two cases that should be ending soon.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, just as a follow-up on that, we do have the legal expenditure report and the change order report. They tend to happen at I want to say it's the first October meeting of the year. We've done that for 3 or 4 years now. So, so my question related to this is this anticipated to cover this year, or understanding that, we don't always have control over when we incur legal costs, but is this likely to also increase, or is this the best estimate for now of what's needed for the rest of the year contract?
This is the best estimate, but if these two other cases are resolved quickly, that cost could be less. But at this time, this is the best estimate.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll also point out, as I've had people from different parts of the district remind me that sometimes we avoid legal costs with good working relationships with our staff and unions, et cetera. So I've had that comment from people before, and I'm sure I'm going to hear it again. So I'll just point it out now. So I know you all are working towards that, but so it's good to remind everybody. All right, we'll jump into change orders. We have 2. The first one is with Tyson Prepared Foods, and that is Mr. Young.
Hello, everyone. This change order here is for the purpose with Tyson Foods to cover the amount of food costs for our lunch program. Our food service department, previous years, we used an outside vendor to source food for our inter-school agreement sites, such as for St. Martin, All Saints, the Booker T. Washingtons in Hamden and on State Street, as well as M City. This school year, we have taken over that production. So what's that looking like? We need more funding for to cover the food costs, because we have the demand now that we are providing the meals to those school sites.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? So, so we're now covering those where before we use contractors for that?
Yes, sir.
And this is these funds are reimbursed just like any other school lunch, school meal, right? So so there's the expenditure here increasing the costs for, in this case, Tyson Prepared Foods, but it's also, we are being reimbursed at the government rate, like for these children, just like we would for a kid at Hill House or.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And so that makes sense to me. My other question is, I know we have another one here with JTM that we'll talk about in a moment, but are you anticipating that there'll be more of these? Because I know you use a variety, like 10 or 12 different vendors for the foods.
Yes, sir, Mr. Wilcox. I'm currently working on those others to submit to you at a later date, but yes, there will be more.
Okay, so just want to make sure I don't have any other questions.
I do have one question.
Yeah, Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Young. You mentioned that these can be reimbursed. We currently have the budget to pay for these up front. And when does the reimbursement come in? Will it be like after our fiscal year?
So we submit our reimbursements on a monthly basis. So it's kind of like
Great.
deferred in arrears. So it's like if we submit October, we get it in November.
Okay. But great. We don't have to wait until everything is over to submit. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So I recommend that the memo, that you add that information to the memo before the full board meeting, because I do know other board members will be looking at this, and it's good to remind people that this is not everybody understands the food service budget is kind of a separate thing. And I guess now that I mentioned that, it's been a while since we've taken a look at the financials from that. So we should probably schedule that in an upcoming meeting just to kind of go over, see where the books are in terms of that. But that this is kind of a separate thing, that it's reimbursed. I just think that would be good to remind people of that.
Sounds good. I'll submit that tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. So we'll move on to 7.2, which is a change order with JTM, which I assume is
It's the same.
thing. Okay. Any questions related to 7.2? Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll move on to purchase orders. The first one is we have several of these, which I think are date changes with no change in funding. So the first one is with Deline Flooring.
Yeah.
Mr. Aline or Mr. Carter?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Wilcox. 8.1 through 8.8 are basically change orders for time, not for money. The work that Fairhaven, there was extensive work inside the auditorium. And so we had to complete that first, and that work took longer than expected by the contractor. And so the last thing we want to do after the work is complete is to do the flooring. It doesn't make sense to put the flooring in now with the work being done. So we asking for a time extension so that the floor is in place after the ceiling and other work is done in the auditorium.
All right. Thank you. Comments or questions related to this? And 8.2 is with Playground at Brennan.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we want this extension because the project came to us late and we had to do some more mitigation. And now that it's winter, we wanted to not try to install. One vendor said he could put the equipment in during the winter, one said he couldn't. So we want to extend the contract time so we can put the equipment in when the weather is warmer and we have the time to do it. But right now it's just not a good time, so we're asking for an extension.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Hearing none. 8.3 is playground design and resurface at Nathan Hale.
Well, it's similar to 8.1 to 8.2. It's a change in time, but not change in conditions or a change in the amount of the contract. We just want to carry these over and get them done without additional dollars.
And that, I assume, is going to cover also 8.4, which is playground installation at Wexler. 8.5 is bleacher installation.
Yeah, that's a project we're working with the city. It's important to get the bleachers done because we can't do anything with the floor and the track. If we put the bleachers in now, the floor will be destroyed, but it's better to do the bleachers first and then we'll do the floor.
My one question on this one is the number correct for the bleachers? Change in funding of 20,000.
Yeah.
624.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, because I thought the this is a Wilbur Cross.
Right.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
Wilbur
thinking
Cross.
field boots,
Yeah.
which is completely different. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some work going on at the gym, and the bleachers are quite old.
Okay, and 8.6 and 8.7 are Tucker Mechanical, one at both at Wilbur Cross, one chiller, one cooling tower.
Correct. No change in funding.
Okay. And I'll just, Mr. Aline had prepared a memo that goes over this stuff as well. And so, okay. And then 8.8 is purchase order with changing the date on security enhancements of 21 Worcester Place.
Correct.
All right. So hearing no questions or comments on any of those, we'll go on to 8.9, which is a purchase order with McDermott Company.
Yeah. Yeah, the sound and lighting system during COVID, they were already. They just failed, and we need those upgrades so that if we have events or there's an emergency, the lights and sounds function. So it's just a security and safety issue.
All right. Comments or questions on this one?
Has this work already begun?
No, it's to extend to June 30, 2025.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the December 13th date that you're seeing, Dr. Yarborough, that's probably when it was submitted.
Yes.
Because we typically would have had a second meeting in December, but we didn't because of the holidays. So,
okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then finally, 8.10 is an amendment to the purchase order with CNC Janitorial.
Yes, I'll cover that, Mr. Wilcox. We started on the green contract back in late spring, and we brought it to F&O and to the Board of Ed. It had to go to the Board of Alders, and it was approved. And after that, there's been some delays. Procurement in City Hall assured us that they would have something out in the next 2 weeks. But to make certain that we don't have a shortfall in supplies, we're putting this in as a backup. We may not have to use it, but I would like to say that a couple months ago, we received a complaint from Con OSHA that we didn't have supplies at one of our schools, which did have the supplies. So we had to, we do not need another complaint saying that we don't have supplies. We just need this as a backup just in case, but hopefully the contract will be released from the city in the next 2 weeks.
All right, comments or questions?
Yes, thank you for the explanation. Does this mean that whatever we spend will be reimbursed by that new contract? Okay, so how does the contract work, please?
Well, you talking about the green contract, the larger contract?
Yes, sir.
Now, this will be a sort of an addendum. If we use it, we will probably deduct the $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000, and also use the contract that's what's left to have supplies in case they're needed after July 1, 2025, because what I don't want to happen is what happened last summer is that we put the contracts in place and it took 2 or 3 months for the contract to come out, and we almost didn't have them in time for school opening. So we will deduct whatever we need from the major contract, but this is basically a backup just in case.
All right. Thank you.
And the major contract is with a different vendor.
Yes, 3.
So the intention is to be moving to this other with more advantageous pricing.
Yeah, and advantageous pricing is it's greenery, supposedly.
Okay. So got it. Makes sense. Thanks for that. I'm just looking at the memo now. Yeah, I'm wondering if it would be helpful to add to this memo in the brief description of service areas to say that specifically, I mean, spell it out a little bit more about how the last sentence is, this is an interim stock order to maintain operations until the New Haven City contract is executed. Maybe just have another sentence or two of explanation that has the background that the intention is to move to this other one. But in the meantime, we still obviously need to have supplies. I think it's already saying that it's the city's working on this. So, okay. My recommendation is that just is updated for the board posting for the next meeting. All right. Hearing no other comments or questions on that, that was the last action item. So I'm going to go ahead and make the motion, and I move that we send to the full board with a recommendation to approve this one abstract, these 2 MOUs, these 3 agreements, this 1 amendment, these 2 change orders, and these 10 purchase orders.
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
President Rivera?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so the motion carries. And we will move into our next item is the monthly financial report for November 2024. Ms. Hannons, Ms. Bourne.
Good evening. This financial report that we're presenting now is just our regular monthly financial report. This would have been the report that we would have presented at the second meeting of December, but because there was only one meeting in December, it's rolled over to the first meeting in January. So basically what we did was to just put together the monthly expenditures that have occurred thus far. Chris?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, it has the operating plan up. Okay, so we have the 2 reports. We have one for the special funds for the period ending November the 30th, where to date we've spent $86.7 million, with general funds spending 53.7, and the special funds we're up to 33 million thus far. So first, we're going to talk about the financial report for general funds. This slide here basically just explains how to read the financial reports, and we try to put this in every month to make it easier for those that are looking at it. So to date, we spent 553,000. So we have and you got excuse me for the numbers, but there's it's showing the encumbrances to date, and then it's showing the available. So again, we're just showing you basically what we spent for the month of November. And this is by line item, so to show you where the funds were actually spent and what were the categories under those reports. Keep going. And then here we have the monthly financial report for the grants category. The budget currently is $92 million, which is a stark difference from what we had in previous years. So to date, we've spent about a third of it, 33,000. We have 19.5 in encumbrances, so we have basically just a little over half left of it, and so we spent 35.72%. And then this slide here just tells you how to read the grant revenue report, and it's letting you know that due to COVID, we still had grants that have rolled over. The COVID funds are now expired. With some that gave us the extensions, but the extension period, so that we're all on the same page, is to process, gave us more time to process our liquidations. Because there were some things that we can only draw down funds for what we've actually expended. So we still have some outstanding bills that need to be taken care of. And so again, we're in the liquidation period of the grants for the ARP ESSER grants. And this shows you the stark difference of what we had from 23-24, where we had $144 million. We were able to roll over 21, but the bulk of that was in the federal grants, and then the ARP ESSER. And then in the other column, what we received for the 24-25 funding, which was about 70 million. We still have the Title I has come in now, so that would be on the next report. And of course, we're still waiting for open choice. You could see the open choice. There's a big difference. I would have to check into why the difference is what it is. Hopefully that, yeah, I'd have to check into that and get back to you for the next report. So our new anticipated funding is at 82.7 with a total available funds of 104. So as you can see, we are down 42%. And this, of course, is looking at the grant funders visually. Some people can see it better this way. So this basically shows you how much are in full-time salaries, how much of the grants are benefits, and other categories. So it's basically showing you how we use our funding grants. I think we need to really look at with these reports, it's showing that these are things that as the grants are depleted, these colored expenditures by categories are really going to start to change. And we've been looking at that for the last 2 years. It's not something that just hit us now. So we've been looking at how we're actually using these dollars and what are things that we typically paid for grants that we still must continue, and we need to find other sources of revenue if we are going to continue these programs. And then now I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? My one question is, does your projections and everything for this report include any extra funds coming from the city through the actions of the Board of Alders allocating some extra funds to the school? Does that appear on this one, or will it appear on future ones?
The additional funds they will not be included in these reports. We'll have to figure out, I'm working with the city now to figure out how the best way to handle that, because it cannot show on our budget page, and we could talk offline if we have any other specific questions regarding how we're going to be able to report the numbers.
Okay. I guess, and the big thing is just how it affects our projected deficit, if at all. So maybe that's the way to, maybe an extra page or something on this that just kind of is deficit specific, if there's going to be some mitigation that comes from that, from those sources of funds. So
I'll figure out how to put that together.
Thank you. All right. There's nothing else on this. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is listed as a quarterly part-time custodial update. The intentions on these is, in the last year, we had a late year surprise of costs related to the part-time custodial contract. So we just wanted to have a quarterly check-in to see how things were going.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Since that surprise, I started meeting weekly with the custodial service company. to do due diligence on their billing. It wasn't really set out in the contract, but they started the contract without a verified payroll system so we could validate the hours that were being billed. And we met over a 2-month period during the summer, and we asked for certified payroll. We asked for no-show, because on any given day, 5 to 15% of the people don't show. So that's 20 to 30 positions, and which would probably offset the permitted events. And it took them quite a while to give it to us. We cut back on permitted events, and amazingly, the bill for November was way lower than previous months. We're going to have a meeting this Thursday with the president and the controller to cross-check what they're doing so that we are not billed or charged for workers that don't show. We keep that information. We get that from the building managers. Also, we have workers that are not showing up and not performing, or workers who are not showing up, but they bill us. So we're going to try to get that under control. And part of the RFP I'm working on to put it out for bid again is to put in more cost controls where they come in with a verified payroll system. We get the call in and call out list so we can have credits of those folks who don't show. But to make it better, we're going to put out the RFP, and we'll meet with SJ on Thursday with legal and finance and ABM, and we'll have more to report. But we have wanted to get control on the cost because we do not have verification that what hours are being billed are really accurate.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? So it sounds like some promising things here. So when do you anticipate you'll be able to give us another update on the resolution on some of these meetings?
Well, we meet this Thursday, either the next F&O meeting or the one after that. But I have to also give you an update on where we are on the RFP being issued.
Okay. So
But we have had legal and finance in the meeting so that things are more consistent, under control. So we're not just, disgruntled about. We are disgruntled about the performance, but they have to do a better job, not only on performance, but also on their accounting side.
All right. So I think we'll add it to the first February meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Give you time to have that, and then also update on the RFP. And
Mm-hmm.
then I guess a final question would be that if you're finding, are we able to go back into a previous fiscal year and recover funds if we've overpaid for work that wasn't provided?
We're going to look at this year to see where the issues are. And if we pull those out, I will check with Corp Counsel, and I think it's a good idea to go back and ask for previous year's funds. But we wanted to start on this year and get things in order.
And making sure that if we have overpaid in, for instance, September, that we have credit for that, so that I think that would be key. And I'm hoping that you can let us know about that at the first February meeting that we have. Just an update to make sure that for this year that we're good. And then what's the possibilities of previous years if we're finding a big issue? Okay. Well, thank you for your attention on this. Are there any other comments or questions on this item? All right. Okay, next item is YFCE RFQ. The ABCs of the, we should have had it, Ms. DeMayo, the ABCs of the YFCE RFQ overview, I think would have.
I think you should do the whole alphabet.
We We probably could fit it in with a little bit of effort.
Yes.
So next year. So just as background, we have an overview every, this is the third year in a row in the first January meeting, just how this RFQ process works, and because it handles so much of our after school programs. So Ms. Joseph Lumpkin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the opportunity of being invited back so we can share our process. Give me a moment to get into my shared screen. And I don't know if you can see my screen. Yes. I am holed up here at the Atwater Center where they're did a fabulous Three Kings Day celebration. And so if you're hearing some noise or what have you, they're just winding down. So gonna go into slideshow. Okay, can we see this? I'm not.
Yes.
Okay, so just want to jump in. I do like to make sure that I spend a little moment on our mission, because this is the walk. This is our journey every day. This is what we remind staff and others what we're all about, in partnership with families and community. New Haven Public Schools empowers every student to thrive in a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment that embraces and cultivates our vibrant cultural diversity. And together, we nurture critical thinkers and lifelong learners. And I just feel it's important to reiterate the mission, because this is what we use to remind ourselves when things get tough, when things go well. This is our work. You can see there the 4 main priorities: teaching and learning, family and community partnerships, culture and climate, and operational efficiencies together there. And certainly our core values, which again is the reminder of who we are and what we're all about. And I say, especially when things get difficult, and it oftentimes is, but also when we are achieving our goals and our expectations. So I'm leaning in here on where you see those 2 orange arrows, family and community partnerships. This is part of our path to excellence, our strategic operating plan. And I will, yes, go ahead and read where it says, if we commit to welcoming and personal connections with families, strengthening relationships with the community, and streamlining communication channels, we will enhance family and community capacity to support student learning outcomes, leading to strong student attendance, academic success, and overall well-being. And that's the focus of the sharing of information tonight. So NHPS or YFCE contracts, we use what is known as an RFQ process, and 3 core elements I wanted to discuss here. One is that the RFQ is a formal process that our office uses to solicit qualifications. The goal is to identify qualified organizations from a variety of service contractors, and we award approximately 40 partners agreements via this process, and this includes our after-school programming, our professional development supports, and family and community engagement. Our process for the RFQ is web-based. We love the fact that we're able to collect our data, analyze who is applying, what is their background. This is all public information. It gives us the opportunity to enhance transparency. So there's not a question around who is actually participating in the process. There is a very specific application process which we believe enhances the focus of our process. And then the vendor application process requires all of our vendors that service us through our department. They register through, and I should mention OpenGov, previously known as Bonfire. There's solicitation access. There's a submission process where the proposals are submitted, and it is all there, open to the public to see. And so we also engage in an intensive rating process. We have an RFQ committee of our personnel, our staff, We've also this year included community organization representation as well as parents to be part of the grading process. We have very specific criteria that's based on the experience and qualifications that we assess. We assess whether the programming is aligned to our path to excellence. And we also look to see if the partner has the capacity to actually deliver the work. And there are a series of questions that we use in the process of evaluation. So our partner selection is based, again, on alignment with our school and students' needs. We go through a needs assessment process, identifying the specific requirements of the district and the schools. We do a service matching to see the offerings compared to what the needs are. We go through a service review, a program evaluation process, reviewing the proposed services against the quality, and we look at the past performance. We get to contract agreements where we have very specific terms and conditions, and we lay out the compliance expectations. Once that process is completed, we go through a planning process, scheduling, coordinating program times with the school and our school calendar so that our contractors are not confused around what days schools are open, what days schools are closed. And New Haven is unique in that we celebrate the diversity of our community, in which celebrating days that are not necessarily celebrated in other school districts that our contractors might be used to working with. We make sure that the resources that we agree upon are available to our contractors. And that might mean that we are providing Chromebooks and computers and desks and whatever is needed so that they can carry out the work. And then in the execution process, we look at the program delivery, how the activities are conducted against the agreed plan. We do our ongoing monitoring and supervision. And then we also work to make sure we're getting the feedback from our communities, from our families, and from our community-based organizations. Specifically in our after-school programs, we use assessment tools that we've discussed here before, surveys, we do interviews with families, we have the standardized after-school program evaluation metrics that we use. We also make sure that we look at the student attendance, academic improvements, progress in targeted areas, the social development based on feedback from our families as well as students and staff, and other feedback mechanisms, as I mentioned earlier, collecting the input from parents and educators to inform improvements. So we track and address success, which could sometimes be complicated, sort of a puzzle that I use here, but performance monitoring, you'll hear me discussing this over and over again, our data analysis, the training part, which is to ensure that we are providing professional development so that our program staff, so that our community partners and contractors are aware of the latest and best practices thinking and research-based thinking and program evaluation. So we provide training to our contractors to ensure that. And we also provide reports to the Connecticut State Department of Education, and student attendance and participation in our programs are also considered key. That's the quick overview of the work that we do with our contractors. And I am happy to, I don't know if I have stopped sharing yet.
You have?
Okay. And
all right, comments or questions from the committee?
Yes, just want to say thank you for this presentation. And I know it can be posted with the materials. I think other board members would be interested in it as well. You've provided this before. It might be of interest to board members to see an example of like the evaluation tool that you use.
yes.
And just maybe, a blank one that's put up. And how do you choose who goes to evaluate, and how frequently you get feedback from observing, but then also maybe from the participants and family members as to the impact of the various programs?
So question one, participation, we have on the inside our internal team, we look for people who have experience in the particular area that we may be focused on. So, for example, internally after school programming, we will look for folks with that experience, and we look for a community partner who may not be applying, but can bring that expertise to the table. And we generally bring parents who we have a track record of working with over time and who are willing to be honest and straightforward and don't necessarily feel some sort of power struggle with us. They bring their clear ideas and feedback to the table. And on the second question you asked, which was around how often, I believe if I remember, how often. So we tend to look on a quarterly basis. So at the end of every marking period, we tend to use that as the point to go in and do an assessment or a review of where we are, where partners are in the process.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, I so just want to echo that. Thank you for the presentation. It's always good to see. I mean, I see refinements every year. This I noticed. I think you said including community partners or parents on the evaluation of the RFQs, and I think that's great. And I do think it's great that you all transitioned to using the city system for this. It provides an even increased level of transparency, and I do appreciate that. So my one question I have for you is, we just had a presentation from Ms. Hannons about the huge decrease in federal funds. And if I remember correctly, all or most of the funding for after-school programs are grant funds from the state or from the feds. So I'm just wondering, are you anticipating some challenges in providing after-school programs moving forward?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, President Wilcox, Chairman Wilcox. It is going to be a very difficult summer for us going forward. In after school, we were able to leverage funds through Title I to help us ensure that at minimum, every Title I school does have some level of after-school programming. All of our schools have students who are considered struggling with low social economic experiences. And so our Title I schools in particular, we want to ensure that they have the opportunities for after-school tutoring and enrichment programs. So we were able to leverage a few extra dollars to be able to ensure that. But you will see me not talk about Saturday Academy. You'll hear me not necessarily talk about spring break. And you'll also hear us talk about the struggles that we will have going into the summer.
So thank you for that. And that's what I was afraid of. And that's just the challenges of, reduced federal funding as these programs come to an end. And then also, as I've pointed out many times in many different meetings, when we have below the state average in per pupil funding, there's just less money to provide these extra extensions rather to our school day, which are so important for the children and for parents. Enhance their learning, and sometimes it's the spark. I've been to some of the after-school programs or the summer programs, and I can just remember little scientists working with extremely little kids, very, very little scientists, and it's those kinds of sparks that you end up maybe with, like a Dr. Yarborough who's running a lab and all that in their adulthood because of these childhood experiences. And so that's why the funding things at the state are going to be very important this year, more so than usual. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hearing nothing else on this, my next item is listed as Transportation Update Brahms. Which I assume.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my screen is flicking. Oh, that's because Dr. White is doing his job perfectly. Yes, we are here because, as you are well aware, Brahms has received funds to become a transition into a high school. And that proposal requires some adjustments to transportation. And we needed to bring it to you as well because it also has a lot of financial impact. And we needed to have you see what we're looking at where we would go from here. Most of you know, transportation is on a tiering system. We have a 3-tier system. All of our high schools are on what's considered the first tier. They are early schools. ESIMS is the only existing example that we have of the middle and high school together as a high school, as a transportation system. They too are on first tier. We do have 4 K-8 schools that are on the first tier, but we'll get to that shortly. So if we were to move Brahms to the first tier with dedicated buses, that means that they would have buses that are only transporting Betsy Ross students, it would cost us an additional $2.2 million. So we all know from previous reports and what we know in deficit, we need to find some other way to how to transport the students, how to make this a viable situation. So that would be 8 New Haven buses and 10 out of district buses is the way that is what we're looking at to service them. However, if we combine them with ESIMS, it would cost us approximately $150,000 additional dollars to post to what it is now. Currently, ESIMS has 9 New Haven buses and 18 out of district buses. ESIMS does not share buses with anyone currently. All of our other high schools, particularly our interdistrict, share with other schools. For instance, when I was the principal of Metro, we shared buses with Metro, HSC, Co-op, and Career, particularly for our district buses and some New Haven buses. That way, it saves costs and it allows us to utilize a lower amount of buses for a more efficient cost. We've figured out that the distance between Brahms and ESIMS is 2.3 miles, which is approximately 9 minutes. We would have the scheduling. We need to go through and look at it and make sure that we can figure out how to best utilize and adjust the bell system for each school to make sure that this would work accordingly. But we've looked at the routes that they presently have for both of them, and they have similar stops in similar places, and a lot of it is very similar. Brahms currently shares New Haven buses with Hill Central. We would need to look and figure out how we would, where we would put the Hill Central buses, possibly with Clemente, which is right next door. Dr. White, thank you. So what would also help us too is that the New Haven buses would allow us to have more New Haven buses for the 2nd and 3rd tiers. Currently, having been a principal of all tiers, I understand what some of the upside is of 2nd tier and the downside of 3rd tier if something happens. So we've looked at that and figured out how we would do it. It also allows the Brahms High School students to join athletic teams from 9th grade as opposed to having them wait. One of the things that was considered was we would do this on a trial basis and then not have the high schoolers do it until the 26, 27 year. And that's not fair to 9th graders. It's not fair to them in teams where they would go. High school students would also benefit from the ability to having jobs and internships afterwards, which is part of why we would want to put them on the first tier. We also don't anticipate any additional buses as the enrollment moves from the grades. As you can see, this would be a phase in each year. So next year, 25, 26, there would be a grade 6 through 9, and it would phase in accordingly. So 28, 29, it would be a 7, 12, which is their initial, the way their grant is written for them to initially be enrolled. Dr. White? So some of the factors that we need to consider and how this will be done is that we need to make sure that this information is put in the magnet brochures, that it's available for open houses, ESIM parent notification. This presentation was given to the Brahms SPMT on Friday. It was well received mostly. They've had other conversations. I have spoken with the ESIM's principal, and we are in the process of getting onto the circuit of presenting to the SPMT, because ESIM's does have some consideration and some questions, as did the Brahms parents, of how to some of the things were questions about whether having middle school students on the bus with high school students. We've explained how we've had experience with that, how well it works. One of the things that I talked about in particular is our students are pretty good at self-selecting. Typically, the high school students will go to the back of the bus and the middle school students need to sit in the front, and they pretty much don't socialize with each other unless they happen to be siblings, and a lot of them do have siblings, so they look out for each other. So those are things that we do. One of the things that we talked about doing, as I said earlier, is that we have 4 first-tier K-8 schools. We were considering moving those to second tier, having a second tier K-8 go to third tier to accommodate Brahms' move. That was just too much confusion and contractual issues, etc. That would work in some ways, but would also cause a lot of headaches for the board and those of us that work in the district. Any questions?
Yes, please. Comments or questions?
I know it was pretty fast.
Yeah, just thank you for the analysis, because I appreciate the options and seeing the numbers, and also with your experience, like hearing your recommendation on what would work well, what the challenges might be. And also thank you for the process, talking with the schools, the SPM&Ts, and really getting everyone's feedback and input as decisions are made. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So yes, thank you for the presentation. And just to clarify, this would be for expenses, transportation expenses for next school year.
Correct.
As these changes happen. So there's no board action required at this point. You're still working things through with SPMTs and answering the questions. And so do appreciate that update.
And we know as these conversations continue, as this becomes more of a realization, that you will get these calls and emails and information. So we need for you to know where we're going from and how this is coming about.
And to follow up on that point is, I would appreciate it if the presentation we just saw could get added to this meeting in board docs, and then added, I guess, as an information item for the full board in board docs for next week. And so if anybody has any comments or questions, they can reach out to you and the superintendent. So, all right. Well, I certainly like 150,000 versus 2.2 million. unless there was funds to transition, the school has an extra 2.2 million in there for transportation specifically. So
I don't think that was written in the grant.
Yeah, so that is sounds like a good set of compromises you all are working through. All right. Well, hearing nothing else on this, just briefly, one of our standing items is our discussion calendar, which there has been an update to extend it out into the end of March. And so just want to make sure we have this on the calendar every week, just so people can kind of see that what's coming up in future meetings. If you have an issue with like, oh, we can't do this on this date, please reach out to the committee and to Dr. Negron and Ms. DeMayo and we'll find a different time to slot it in. The other thing I want to say, because it addresses also the Series 3000 policies and update, I attended the last governance meeting, and there is a slight change to the procurement policy that they're probably going to be moving forward with, which I support, which is adding in a sentence into it in the change orders that if there is that if we know we're going to be having a change order that is imminent, that you notify this committee when it becomes clear that that's going to be happening, and not waiting until the actual change order is submitted through. So a good example of this, since we had some light snow flurries today, if at the end of January, it's pretty clear that maybe because we unfortunately had a lot of snow, that we are going to have cost overruns in what's allotted for what's been budgeted still by the contracts, but what's been budgeted for that item, that you notify this committee at a regular meeting, just to kind of go, okay, here's a heads up that that's going to be happening, as opposed to waiting until all the invoices come in and doing everything at once.
Mr. Wilcox, just like to
Yes.
say that I met with facilities today, and we are tracking the events, the costs by contractor. And I think at the next meeting or two, I'd like to present where we are on our tracking of costs and what the contractors are doing. But we do track that, which wasn't done in previous years.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. That sounds like a great refinement, and it'll make it easy for something like this, because you'll also notice, and on the discussion calendar, there's a standing item that's now called, I think it's upcoming financial issues. And if there's anything that's similar to the transportation issue we just heard, or if we're going to see some cost overruns in a change order or something, anything that's kind of looming that you think we need to be aware of, or something that's good, like, just let us know. That'll be a kind of a standing thing. But the intention of it is to address that if there are going to be known cost overruns, that as you all know that it's pretty certain, to just give us a heads up so that there's no surprises. And then that'll show up in the minutes for this meeting, and the rest of the board will be able to see that too. So that's that. That's the end of our agenda. Unless there's any questions on discussion items or Series 3000 policies, and if not, a motion to adjourn would be great.
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded, and we can't discuss it, so we just will vote. President Rivera?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you. Good night.